Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to tap into a topic that's been sort of controversial on how people deal with coming in and out of addiction. There's all kind of different treatment plans out there and all different type of addictions. And me personally, I think when you have different addictions, they require different ways to deal with. Today on the show, we have all the way from Dale. Let me make sure I get the pronunciation. Delray Beach.
Yes.
Delray Beach, Florida.
Yes.
A young lady who shared her story, and it was so impactful. I was thinking, how do we take such a story and spin it into 30 minutes and so people can understand exactly what you went through? But I told her we're going to do it. Like to welcome to the show, Whitney Kell, and not Hale with a K. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andre. It's an honor and a privilege to be on your show. It sounds like you provide so many people a lot of benefit and service. So thank you for including me.
Thank you. Your story is definitely impactful. I remember just before we went live, you was like, I could tell you about the one with my sister. I'm like, holy crap, that's another story. Tell the viewers a little bit about who you are before we really get deep into your life and how you came out of addiction.
I am a 53-year-old woman who is definitely in midlife. And I'm from Portland, Oregon originally, and had some, trauma as a child, as most people did, as you mentioned. I drank and did cocaine and crystal meth. I stopped doing cocaine and crystal meth when I turned 21. And when I turned 28, my mother passed away. And I felt like I had two paths before me. I could go down her path, or I could make another decision. And I made a different decision, and I decided to give it a whirl to see if I could stop alcohol for 1 year. And next thing I know, I was in an 18-year relationship building a weight loss company. And I've been a coach for 22 years this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Let me go back a little bit. You said something that was really profound. So let's go back to where it all started. Portland, Oregon. From what I hear about Portland, it's a great city, great community, great. Everything is great there. How in the hell do you get caught up in addiction of drinking, and more importantly, what you just said, crystal meth? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, so crystal meth is actually one of the capitals in Portland, Oregon. You make it in the bathtub with chemicals. And my girlfriend's sister's boyfriend was actually one of the people making it. So I had easy access to crystal meth as a teenager, and I started using at 14. I'm ADHD, so which is a symptom of trauma, and it actually helped me stay focused. But as I grew up and got older, playing with meth and coke was just part of the lifestyle. That's what we did. And
Where was your
Oregon,
mom and dad at during all this in your family? I can't imagine just walking in the house and seeing my kids, teenagers, just smoking and drinking. Where was your role models? Where was your mom and dad? What were they like in your life?
well, my dad, we didn't talk to for years. First, we didn't talk to my mother since the age of 6 until I turned 14. Then I moved in with my mother, and we didn't talk to my father until she passed away, which was 24 years ago. She passed away. My mother and I did crystal meth together before I'd go to school.
Say that again.
Well, I was in economics, and I was supposed to make a project, and I made peanut people. I made this peanut people project, We cut the hair, we did the art. We were up all night on crystal meth. I got an A+ on the project, by the way.
Wow.
But I
Okay.
was, I think I was 16. And
Now,
unfortunately, some of the people that I attended high school with never did stop. Some went to prison. Portland's a rainy place. 360 days of the year it rained. We had the highest suicide rate in any high school when I was raised in Portland, Oregon.
you mentioned during the pre-interview, you come from a long line of the word addictive personality traits. What were some of those family? How deep did the wheel go when you talk
Right.
about
Well,
family addiction?
yeah, my mom was raised in foster care with two sisters who were all from different men. Her mother, the times I remember meeting her, she was drinking. I could smell it on her breath. I remember, you know how your parents force you to hug the other people, the relatives where you have to give them a hug. And I remember how bad she smelled. My grandparents would drink, on my dad's side would always drink whiskey and Coke. That was what was in their back area. So I just came from a lot of people and a long line of probably family members who had trauma. You imagine what your mom and dad went through as children and how different things are now, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And, I had a friend who has help, like they have nannies and they have so much help. And they said, imagine being a parent back then and you got those kids all the time. Let's say you have a mental illness. Like my mother was probably bipolar, untreated, and she's got two kids to raise. You don't get to sleep. So you're slapping the kids around or you're drinking to relieve the pain of the unhealed childhood that you've had. And now you've got another kid you got to raise and you didn't even get raised well yourself.
How do you afford? How, how do you afford to keep this type of lifestyle? This is generation to generation to generation. It takes money to get your hands on these resources for addiction, meth, to make it, to do liquor. I mean, how are you guys providing this? Who's providing the resources?
Right. That's a good question. Well, you think about now, most kids have access to millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars here. But back then, we would scratch together money. I started working when I was 14 years old. So I started working at Winchell's. I remember mopping the floor. My mom would come in, she almost peed her pants laughing so hard, watching me wash somebody else's floors. I wanted my own money. I mean, I think a lot of addicts are some of the smartest people on the planet. They just don't know how to deal with the trauma that they experience, so they drink it. Does that answer your question?
I'm more concerned about when you have to feed the habit. So naturally, by this, you're saying this is natural where you're from your family. Like, but it takes a lot of money to feed this habit. Like just mopping floors just ain't covering it. I mean, how was everybody being fed? These
Right. My mother married a man. We visualized it. My mother was very spiritual, despite the fact she was also an addict. And we were living on food stamps. Um, and she was a manicurist. And I remember we visualized my stepdad coming in. She married a heart surgeon, and suddenly we were financially well. But before that, as I mentioned, my girlfriend's uh, sister's boyfriend was making crystal meth in the bathtub. Crystal meth is like poor man's cocaine. So that was easy to get a hold of.
your mother
Um,
marries a heart surgeon. I'm
mhm.
trying to I'm not judging. I'm just trying to get clarity here. Putting myself in probably the viewer's mind. What was this heart patient, this heart surgeon? What was it about your mom that drove him to marry your mom? Because if you got this addiction, was she that good at hiding her addiction that this guy would marry her and jeopardize his own career with meth and alcohol and addiction problems and so forth? I'm trying to understand. That's all.
Yeah. Well, what my opinion is my mom was a functional alcoholic. And by functional, that means that you can do life where people don't know that you're an addict until they get super close. And so what she did was she withheld certain things, including sex, until they got married. And my mom was sexy. She was beautiful and she was fun and funny. My girlfriends would come over. People from school came to my house to hang out with my mom. She was super cool.
What was
And
what was law enforcement? I mean, if you got that many people coming around, uh, almost let's call it what it is, a crack house, law enforcement has not be far. Or did you guys live in a community where they was like, fuck it, they got addiction problem, let them self kill themselves.
well, um, the people who were making it, the crack dealers who were not crack, crystal meth, who were actually making it, they did have some legal issues. We were in the suburbs, so we would have parties. We'd have 200 people over, and my mom would buy the kegs. So we would just have huge parties in the backyard. Oregon, back in the day, it was just fields, like
You guys
you're
lived in the
outside.
suburbs and on food stamps.
Yeah. Well, my dad was a cop, by the way. Speaking of where was the police?
Wait a minute, time out. Your father was a cop
He
and
was a
he
police
was
officer with the
aware
Portland
of what
Police.
was going on with
Yeah.
in your household.
Well, he knew what was happening with my mother, so that's why he ended that relationship. And he remarried, and we just didn't talk to him. He would hear about stuff like my sister and I were shoulder tapping. You know what shoulder tapping is downtown. We got someone else to buy us beer, and we crossed the street illegally, and we got in trouble. And they almost gave us a ticket. And then we said, what's your last name? And it was Kell. And they said, oh, we know your dad, David Kell. It's like the military, the police department. It's a brotherhood. So they let us go. I got out of a couple tickets because of that.
But
So because
didn't your father, the police officer, see the unhealthy environment that his kids were in? And did he step up to take control of the situation? Because you said you was using while you was 13. So you was using right
14,
14. So you were still using after your father left your mom, correct?
I moved out of my father's home at the age of 14. So when I moved in with my mother, we were not being watched. So we were wild. And I'd already went through, and what my opinion is, by the way, Andre, I learned recently, not too long ago, from my cousin that her father was beating her brothers. My assumption, my suspicion, although my father would never talk about it with me, he's not open to talking about and discussing things about our family. They didn't talk about stuff back then. But what my assumption is, because she said he didn't beat her, my cousin's a woman, but he beat the boys. So my assumption is that my dad was emotionally unavailable and didn't have a relationship with my sister and I because he was afraid he would act out on what happened in his childhood.
What happened to your
So
dad's childhood? Do you have any idea?
his dad was a garbage truck worker, and I know that he and his twin brother tried to kill each other. And I'm pretty sure that my grandfather beat the shit out of both of them. So I believe that is why my dad didn't get involved in our lives when we left his home and went to be with my mom. My stepmother said, don't call for 30 days. My
Why?
stepmom was jealous of my mom. She was insecure. She had another daughter. She just didn't really feel, a lot of women, in my experience, don't have the love for themselves and the knowing that their value is high enough where they don't have to compare and compete to other people. And I believe that my stepmother, even the last time I saw my dad, she sat in between my father and I hadn't talked to him in 20 plus years.
I know this is kind of like a hypothesis. You mentioned the environment where you grew up, Portland, Oregon, nothing being around. How widespread was addiction as far as you can remember?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of the people I went to high school with either post about being sober or they've passed on. or they're still in it. My girlfriend, when I went back for my 20-year high school reunion, one of my best friends, the one whose sister was using or was dating the guy who was making it in the bathtub, had went to prison for beating up her husband. And there was another woman who had scratched her face so much because, you know, you get the skin stuff, and when you're on crystal meth, it makes you weird. So she had done some pretty serious damage. And
You see a lot of stuff going on at a young age.
oh,
When do you decide no, let me rephrase this. When did the move to San Diego take place? Eventually you got to realize something just ain't right.
right. So when I left Oregon and moved to, oh, I mean, I don't want to go through the whole story, but eventually we ended up in San Diego. My mother and I had physical fights at some point in our relationship where we'd be drinking and we would physically get into a fight. We were best friends. I loved her so much. So when I had my own place, I was just reflecting on this not too long ago. When I had my own place to live, we got along really well.
Did you
What
know
would
why you were
happen is,
fighting? Did you know why you were fighting?
my belief is that the spirit of alcohol took over. If you allow spirits into your body and you ingest a certain amount, you're no longer there. You're checked out. Another spirits come in
I
and it
mean, but
takes over.
I guess what I'm saying is,
Anger.
they usually say, when like you said, when you're drunk, everything comes out. Can you reflect back then some of the
Mhm.
things you might have said to your mom? Because that's when you probably was most vulnerable and everything just spilled out. Do you recall anything that you guys were saying amongst each other and then look back later and go, wow, I can't believe that, that was all bottled up inside me?
Well, my memory is not great, I'll be honest, at 53 menopausal. But what I can say, and we were drinking at the time and drugging, what I can say is that there was a lot of anger. My mom demonstrated, and this is something that I've learned in therapy, she was able to quickly use other people's systems to process, digest, and metabolize her anger. She did not have a demonstration of how to process, digest, and metabolize her own anger and let it go.
Mhm.
So I never had anyone to demonstrate to me how to do that internally. So generally, if something triggered me that she would say or do, which was frequent, I would call her a narcissistic alcoholic, but I think those terms are thrown around so much. And I don't have factual evidence that that's what the story was. I just know she was mentally ill to some degree. To do crystal meth with your children when they're 15, she slept with my sister's boyfriend. I mean, she was out of control. She didn't have a demonstration. There was no one who led her into her own heart to help her know how to process, digest these emotions that she was having. And when you don't have someone teaching you that, my opinion is, in addition to all the trauma you've experienced, you look outside yourself for answers. So physical violence is outside yourself. If you're trying to repair a wound inside and you can beat the crap out of somebody on the outside, you feel empowered. And so, like, we pulled each other's hair. And I remember that was the last time that I lived with her. That was the one time we got physically violent with each other. I moved out. We were living in a trailer park in San Diego. And I knew I had to get my own place because we were going to do some serious
Did
damage to
any of
each
you
other.
guys
And
ever get incarcerated from your actions?
my sister was on antabuse at the age of 15. I don't know if you know what antabuse is. Some of your
Mhm.
watchers will. And she was arrested 3 times. She stabbed me in the back with a knife one of those times, and she hid in the bushes outside. So she didn't get arrested for that. But she did. One of the times she used my ID when they pulled her over for DUI. And we had this school program where they come and pick you up at school. Or if you get drunk, they pick you up from the police station. And they walked in and said, I'm not going to share her name publicly,
Right.
but
I understand.
they said her name out loud. And they looked at the license and they're like, oh, you're not Whitney? And they took her back in and booked her. So I know we bailed her out of jail at least 3 times. So the night she stabbed me in the back with a knife, that was intense. My sister changed. My sister had such a deep, my belief, mental illness, and the spirits. As I saw in one of your shows, there's like whatever you want to believe about spirits, but she got inhabited by some nasty spirits depending on what she drank. She still does. She has not chosen to make a change to her life. I did. And she just threw a knife at me and it stabbed me in the back. And multiple times she beat me up. She'd lose boyfriends because she would beat me so hard because she didn't have an example of how to digest and metabolize the fact that we didn't have a father who cared for us. We were traded from home to home. My mother didn't have mental stability. So no one taught us how, like I'm learning right now from Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, which I love. And he said, sit with your own heart, open your heart and sit with your heart. I don't think I've ever had anyone sit with my heart. No one was present enough. My mother, between her ADHD, probably because I've got it, and the bipolar and all the drinking and the nervous energy that she expressed and the anger, I didn't have that person, the mom that showed up as a mom. She showed up as a friend. I forgive her. She didn't have the capacity. She didn't know how to do it. I have 150% forgiven her, especially after living with my girlfriend who has a 3-year-old and laying there exhausted and on no sleep and realizing why my mom was the way she was and why so many people leave their families and kids. If you're mentally ill, you've had no sleep, and there's this little human being in front of you reflecting back all of your stuff, and you don't know how to deal with your own emotions, you're going to go drink or drug. I mean, it's an escape, a distraction.
Now you wind up going to San Diego, and you mentioned you've found a significant other, 18
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
Were you still acting the same way with this life partner? I call it life partner, or a significant other. Were your behavior still the same, or did they change, or what was his role in your life at that point?
Right. Well, just before I met this man, I had gotten in a car accident in Pacific Beach with my mother in the car. I shouldn't have been driving. My boyfriend was in the car at the time and he was sober. Anyways, we got hit by a car. She was injured. My mother was injured. I said I was injured, by the way, which is why I didn't get a DUI. They take you to the hospital. They don't send you to jail. So I never went to jail. I went to the hospital. They drew my blood. I got a DUI. But my mom was injured and she got even crazier. Like when I was on the phone with my mom, I could set the phone down and she'd be screaming when I'd pick it back up. She was so angry at so many things. She just couldn't deal with it. So what happened was after we didn't speak for a while and I was working at Nordstrom, I got a job. I got some distance from her, which, you know, I have one true sentence. If my mother hadn't died, I wouldn't have gotten to live because we were so codependent. But I'm driving home from Nordstrom. I look over and there's these two guys in a Jeep. They jump out of the car and they give me an invitation to an Austin Powers party. And there's story from there to there, but I'm going to be brief. We end up going to the party with my friends and my sister on the bay in San Diego. And that's where I met him. And then we went out and I would drink heavily. And I do believe that not everyone, but a lot of people who drink are insecure. And that's why they cheat on partnerships. If you have a solid agreement, you're so insecure, you're trying to fill from the outside those insecurities. So you're sleeping with other people to make you feel good and get in your ego. And I would have done that. But I decided when my mom passed away, I met him about a month before my mom passed away. I feel like the angels brought him in to save me.
Did he save you?
So what he said to me, he was the first person that ever said, I've already done this, because he had another girlfriend who was smoking hot, by the way. I met her. It really raised his level up when I met her because she was so cute. He goes, I already did that with her. I don't want to do that again. He goes, I want a healthy girlfriend. And it just so happened his roommate at the time was dating somebody in AA. She said, hey, why don't you start coming to meetings with me? I did. I said, I want monogamy. He said, I want a healthy relationship. I said, what if I get sober? And he said, okay, we'll talk about it if you get sober. So I decided I can do anything for 1 month. I did AA for a month or a year. I said I'd do it for a year. And if my life doesn't get so much better, I don't even recognize it, I'm going to start drinking again. And we were together for 18 years, and we had a very healthy relationship,
So
and I
your
did a
life
lot of
did
work,
make a turn for the best. When you look
transform.
back, when you look back at that, your life, you gave yourself a year. Why only a year? Because any addiction is one step at a time. Be grateful for making it through to the next day, making it for an hour. Why did you give yourself a year? I'm just curious.
Right. Well, I just want to say one other thing. When I was 21 is when I gave up crystal meth and cocaine on my own. I said, I have this obsessive compulsive, I'm very particular. And I said, I'm going to quit drugs when I was 21. I'm like, you can't be this old and still do that. And then I set my sobriety date as well for January 1st. And I said, look, I'm going to do January 1st, 2000 is when I got sober. Technically, my sponsor told me it's January 2nd because I was still drunk. And then I said, okay, I can do anything for 1 year. I believe in myself. And I got a sponsor, and, I just decided to commit to it. I thought, there's a lot of things that I've done in my life, and I call it testing. I do this in business now. It's like 6 months is a test. In your life, if you want to do anything, do it for 6 months or a year. And if your life doesn't change or you don't notice the improvement, go back. So that's what I did.
What do you think would have happened? No, let me rephrase this. Why do you think it took so long?
Why do
You
I
was
think
pretty
what took so
much
long?
you was pretty much on the road to self-destruction. And you're seeing the
Right.
self-destruction in your own family lineage from your
Mhm.
mother, your father, abandonment issues, narcissistic personalities, illegal drugs. I mean, the whole 9 yards. What took so long for you to get out of this mindset? And I'm
It's a
only saying
really
it
good
because I
question.
don't understand it. To me, if I see all of this chaos and I see that it's causing me problems to where I'm fighting with my mother, I need to address
Physically,
that. My
right?
sister stabbing me in the back. Help me understand why it took so long.
Well, for me, I couldn't see it. When you're in an addiction, I don't think you can see that you're in the addiction. It's like people who are single-minded focus wizards, politics, religion, they can't see anything else. You can't see gray when it's black and white. So when I was in my addiction, it started becoming my friend saying, "You're not even having fun anymore. Why are you drinking?" It was the accident I had where I almost went to jail for a DUI, but I got out of it because I'm smart. I had an injury. Those things, and I went to AA, and I'll never forget when they said, "We think you're an alcoholic." And I went home and I told my mom, and she said, "No, we're not. We're not alcoholic. I don't want to talk about that." So I think when people are in whatever pattern of addictive thinking that they're in, and that's what I think it all comes down to, is the thought is just a belief. Is thought is just a belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So if you always are thinking like the trauma or whatever that is, and you get hooked on that thought, and
Mhm.
you're not able to pull yourself out of it, which is what I've come to learn is actually the way to do it, is to let your body believe the imagination of a child, no matter how shit your life is. If you can sit in that shit and just feel in your body, what would it be like if everything I've ever dreamed of came true? What does that feel like? So what I do is I imagine my friend's 3-year old, how giggly she is and how sweet she's in love with her. And it makes my heart so full. And I hold that. I hold that belief and that imagination of what feeling happy, feeling grateful, feeling like $20 million is in my bank account, feeling like I'm so healthy, feeling like I have the relationship of my dreams. I'm madly in love.
Mhm.
And what has been happening for me is things have been shifting. But going back to that time of when I finally got out of drinking and drugging was other people's opinions.
Mhm.
Someone reflecting back to me, hey, you look miserable. That doesn't look fun. I don't want to do that.
What was it
I don't
like for
want you
you
around.
really to wake up? Now that you brought that up, what did you really know the difference now that you look at it when you woke up unsober versus sober?
So, what's it like when you start changing your behaviors and getting a clear
Yeah, like
mind?
I would
And
think if
yeah,
you're like drinking and partying, you waking up, and, oh God, I got a headache. And, are you, like, what was that like for you? Like, to me, that would have
Yeah.
been like the awakening call. I'm sick and tired of headaches, but your norm was to have dysfunction. I take it.
Brilliant. Very good. As a normal person, we call you normies in AA. As a normal person, I understand that you can't understand what it's like. My experience is, yeah, I felt like shit. But what turned on in the morning was that thought about wanting my next drink, how to distract myself. That's what I come to learn my addictions are here to serve me with, is to recognize I need to get off of the roller coaster, the hamster ride of that particular thought, the physical addiction, whether it's smoking or drinking. It's just a thought that I keep thinking, that I'm used to running the drama and the trauma. I'm used to that connection, which connects me with my mother and my childhood, which is not serving me. But until you can step out of it long enough, you can't
Did the
see it.
did the thought of hurting yourself, hurting someone else, maybe even killing somebody? You said you was in a car accident. None of that even registered to you at that at any given moment, correct?
Well, what I'll say is that if there's a police officer anywhere in a range sober 24 years, I can see it. I used to drive drunk so much, with that one eye open and you're trying to get home.
Really?
I would say that I wasn't aware. And that's why I have so much compassion and empathy for people. They just, everybody's right by their method. I was right by the method because that's all I knew.
I understand.
Everyone, every position, people are all coming from their perspective in life, and they're right by that perspective because that's all they know. I
Before
just,
we wrap up, and let
yeah,
me first say thank you so much for coming on and sharing such a beautiful story of addiction and coming out of it, you know. But my question is, you went to AA. Were there moments in AA that stories or that impacted you, that made you say, because I guess when you go in there and you're used to the norm, you probably went in and was like, "Oh, I can beat this." But as you sit there and listen to other people's stories, did some of those stories help to change your projective of way of thinking?
for sure. What I learned in AA, which I use now in my coaching practice, is telling stories from an I perspective is the only way that people are going to hear you. When you speak for the general population,
Right.
how can you speak for another person? So that was one of the things. This is my feeling, being able to feel things again, because alcohol, drugs, it prevents the feeling, because I was so scared and I just didn't know how to digest and metabolize fear, anger, all of those emotions. So alcohol was a buffer and it was numbing. And what AA allowed me to do was have another person, like I said, with my former partner, when he said, I want a healthy girlfriend. Your sponsor is a healthy example of what's possible should you choose to go in this direction. And they hold your hand. And I think that is the power of AA, not just the community of hearing those stories, like you said, and they're very conscious. You can hear when people go into mental illness. You can hear, I mean, if you're
Right.
healthier yourself, I
Yeah.
outgrew AA. I think it's a powerful, necessary community. And a lot of people are still in it. And I support that 100%. But I started doing other spiritual work that, from my perspective, graduated me. I have zero desire to drink alcohol. I am clear that spirit is not my spirit. I believe there's lots of spirits that we can play with. There's all kinds of medicines out there that you can choose to put in your body, and some of them will take you in the direction that you need to go, and some of them won't. And right now, meditation is my medication.
What are
My
you
number
doing?
one spirit is self right now. Sorry.
You're doing a lot of stuff now with physical health, mental well-being, financial, and more importantly, the word I like to use, abundance and stuff. Before we wrap up, what's your life like now? What do you want people to get out of your story?
I have moments where I feel like I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. Freedom is my middle name. Now, what was most important to me when I was 15, 20, 30, 40, and now in my 50s, completely different. I am so proud of myself for making the decisions that I made, that discipline, the way that I took care of myself when no one else was there to show me how. And I made decisions. And then I feel like, the steps that I was able to move into really helped me. So I'm very grateful. I'm happier than I've ever been. And if I hadn't, I think a lot of people who end relationships, I ended that 18-year relationship. I think what happens is people know that a relationship is over, whatever that relationship is, with alcohol, with a spouse, friends. They know it's over, but they stay in it. And they don't hate the other person. They hate themselves for not ending it, not choosing to take discipline or to take healing or to take their own life back. And what I've done is over and over again, I've stood up for myself. I've been open-minded to take the next step from a healing perspective. And I believe because of that, my spirituality is tight. I have a very, very strong spiritual practice. And, a lot of people tell you to do self-love. I feel like I've had a direct experience with what that actually means. And you were loved when you were little, is my guess. So the people out there who don't have addictive behaviors, they were loved in a healthy way. You
Mhm.
were cared for. You didn't have someone demonstrate alcoholism behavior. People who are sexually traumatized, I think it's 90% of people who had sexual trauma go out and repeat it. It's just, we're just doing, this is why I have so much compassion. If you imagine whatever happened in someone else's life, who were their parents, you can kind of get a sense of what that person's gone through. So for me, ending my relationship with addiction, and I do it all the time because I have addictive thinking still. It's not, there's no, there's no end to this journey until we're dead, in my opinion.
Right.
It's a practice over and over again.
You know what? Thank you so much for coming on, Whitney, and sharing that beautiful story. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. I know you definitely, this story will impact, if it doesn't impact the world, it will impact one person. And sometimes that's all we need to do is impact one person. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.